1010 WOLB Baltimore and WERQ FM HD3 Baltimore.
The views and opinions of the guest and host you hear on 1010 WOLB
are not necessarily those of the staff and management of Radio 1, its sponsors, or advertisers.
Good afternoon, Baltimore. Welcome to another edition of the DMV Daily Radio Show. It's a wet Friday, but it's Friday nonetheless. And I'm your host, Hassan Giordano, a.k.a. Mr. Politics, back in the building for another free-for-all Friday program. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. When I asked the guest the other day about their favorite moment of election 2018, people on social media said, Hassan, you forgot to announce your own. Well, that was my favorite moment. A 29-year-old Bronx native who defeated a 10-term incumbent, Joe Crowley, in the Democratic primaries, will now represent New York's 14th congressional district, making her the youngest ever person elected to the United States House of Representatives. And Democrats picked up 2 more seats today in the House, making the count now 225 to 199, with 11 more House races still too close to call. And in Georgia's 6th congressional district, this one also kind of pulls at my heartstrings as well. I guess they would be 2 of my favorite. A gun reform advocate by the name of Lucy McBath, an African-American woman whose son Jordan Davis was shot to death in November 2012, if you remember, in a hate crime, defeated Republican Congresswoman Carrie Handel in a conservative district that was so conservative it was once represented by my main man, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. And now that Maryland Democrats control 7 of the big 8 jurisdictions here in Maryland: Prince George's, Montgomery, Howard, Anne Arundel, Charles, Baltimore County, and Baltimore City, as well as 7 of the state's 8 congressional districts, as well as all the statewide seats except the big one. Question is, what's next for Maryland voters? We gonna get more taxes? What's happening? An officer, Richard Panjero, was found guilty today, not about an hour ago. As Judge Finn found him guilty. That was the officer, Baltimore City Police Department, who made national news for getting caught planting evidence on his own body camera. He said it was a reenactment. Guess the judge didn't believe him. Kudos to the state's attorney's office in Maryland Mosby for bringing home that much-needed victory today. But before we get going, we want to let you know, as always, this program is owned, operated, and produced by the DMV Daily Media Group, Maryland's premier communication firm specializing in radio, television, online podcast productions. Get your message heard each and every day by advertising right here on the DMV Daily Show. If you want your business or your message heard by thousands of people on multiple streams, or if you want to have your podcast or your business having its own podcast, here in DMV Daily Media Group is where you want to get it done. You'll be on iTunes, Spotify, Alexa, Facebook, Periscope, YouTube, Google Play, TuneIn. You name it, we'll have you on there. Each and every day, hit us up, info@dmvdaily.news or at 443-294-3900. Now, remember, DMV Daily is in the process of creating our own radio station, complete with a brand new studio so people can come in to do those podcasts and do so much more with equipment that will allow us to not only do what we do here in studio, but as well as live on location. Remember, the 2019 legislative session just around the corner. So we want to make sure that we have reporters in the House, in the Senate, as well as in the governor's mansion to make sure that we're giving you all the information live right as it happens from Annapolis during that 90-day legislative session. And we're prepared to do town halls in reference to a lot of important issues. We talked about it here before. Eye in the sky. needs to be discussed on a citywide issue seriously, once and for all. Are we going to move forward, or are we going to scrap this program? We need to have that conversation in Northwest Baltimore about the Jewish community and the African American communities, and how do we move forward with the elected class of individuals that we have right now representing that very important 41st Legislative District and the 5th and the 6th Councilmatic Districts. And we got so much more. We want to be able to have people come out to hear their frustrations and what they want to see happen during that 90-day legislative session. Unfortunately, many times our legislators go to Annapolis without the people's agenda. They go with their own agendas. They listen to lobbyists. They listen to special interests. They do what other people who have their agendas put before them. But we never have the people's agenda put before them. We want to make sure that happens as well. But the only way we can do that, again, we're almost there. Just that close. We need your help, family. We're about to reach our goal. We got to reach it before Thanksgiving. That's our cutoff date before we can be able to move into these brand new facilities down there on Maryland Avenue. Go right now. GoFundMe.com/DMVDaily Radio. GoFundMe.com/DMV Daily Radio. You can get $5, $10, $20. I mean, let's be honest. You spent more than that today in lunch and cigarettes. All right? Go ahead, donate it today. Make sure, we make sure that we have that opportunity to bring you this power-packed type of news and information each and every day, not only on this show, but again, to produce other hard-hitting podcast programs and radio programs. We'll have a radio station that you can hear this type of information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, straight off of DMVDaily.news. There's no other place that's doing it in this region. We want to be the first to do it, and we need your help to do it. So again, GoFundMe.com/DMV Daily Radio. Now, we want to let you know that this show is brought to you by that fine union known as SCIU 500. Don't judge them based off their political director. Just know that they are the best union in the entire world, and they want you to know that Together We Rise is not just a slogan, but the blueprint for the future of the union movement. Visit them today, www.sciu500.org. And then if you're thinking about running for office, because we're going to be talking about that next week on Monday, though the 2020, not only the presidential elections, but the elections right here in the city of Baltimore, make sure you reach out to Politicom Strategic Solutions. They successfully has been helping candidates get elected since the 1970s. Politicom has mastered the art of political communications and become Maryland's premier campaign consulting firm. I'm telling you right now, if you're looking to get elected, you want to contact them today. Political consultants, communications, they can get your media buy done, build your website out, your social media, the video graphics, whatever you need done, Politicom will get it done for you. PoliticomSolutions.com is the website. And before we get started, I want to let you know you can join the conversation today. Real easy. Pick up the phone. Dial 410-481-1010. That's the number. It's just that easy. Or go to Facebook.com/DMV Daily News. Just that simple. You can become a part of this conversation. Leave your information in the question you may have right on there on the Facebook feed. We look at it while we're filming the show, so we'll be able to respond to it as well. Before we get going, I also want to let you know to my favorite guy right here across from you. It's called the Hogan History. I put together some facts about the Hogan victory, right?
Can you turn my mic on before you go?
It is on, isn't it?
No, it ain't.
What break you on? You're on 5. 5 is on. Talk.
Now it's on. Yeah, now it's on.
Before we get started, let me go get Ivan, because Ivan's got to contribute to the late jar. And he's running behind. I got to go get him. I got to step out for a second.
Both years, Governor Larry Hogan carried 20 out of 24 counties, excluding Charles, Montgomery County, PG, and Baltimore City, of course, and increased his margin in Montgomery County this year by 7%, from 37 to 44%. And in fact, it was so dominant that despite the increased turnout in this year's election, Ben Jealous got fewer votes than Anthony Brown did 4 years ago in 11 different counties. That's huge. But anyway.
Of course, that means he got more votes than Anthony Brown in 13 counties, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. But it is what it is.
It is what it is.
But my question is, how is he going to move forward? Because he got a diminished house. Mm-hmm. They only gained one. Would you say he's only fun with one?
Yes. They drove for 5, but they're gonna have to find a way to have fun with one.
Well, that's gonna be interesting. And my main man, I think he just called too. Let me see if that was him. I don't know. Okay, I think he will be calling in today. So I ain't gonna spoil the surprise. Anytime. Waiting on you now.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
We're going to have a surprise state legislator call in today about breaking news that happened just earlier today. And that we want to talk about, give him the information to talk about as well, that people should know. It's not something that's going to, it's earth-shattering in certain political realms. Not something that's going to change the state of Maryland tomorrow. But I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, especially from this individual and what we saw the courts just rule on. So that'll be something we'll talk about as well. But let's get back into our conversation. Mark.
Yes, sir.
Now, I thought Alexandria was a huge win in the Bronx.
Absolutely.
Right? Great young lady. But to be able to see Lucy McBath in Georgia's 6th district, right? She's a part of really the national moms movement.
Yep.
Mothers Against Murdered Sons and Daughters, right? We saw what happened to our son Jordan a few years ago. How huge is that from a Democrat? You know, I know Democrats always want to win, and you're going to think every win is a huge.
No.
But how huge and monumental is that victory?
It's hard to overstate the extent to which Lucy McBath's victory represents a real sea change in Georgia, and especially in that district. It's important for people to understand. I don't know how many people remember the Jordan Davis case, but the Jordan Davis case was a young man that was in an SUV, if you'll remember, that pulled into a convenience store parking lot, and his friends were playing music, and the white man next to him in the car told the people in the car that the music was too damn loud. And then there became a verbal altercation, and the SUV that the Jordan was in was going away, yet this man reached into his glove compartment and fired a shot that killed Jordan Davis dead. So if you'll remember, it was the loud music case. Most folks, that's the way they remember it. Well, that's Jordan Davis. His mother is Lucy McBath, who was a flight attendant for American Airlines, okay? And after she quit American Airlines, after her son died, she just began to become an anti-gun control activist. And then, lo and behold, her first race ever, she runs for the United States Congress, and she wins against a former statewide elected official. Be clear, Karen Handel is the former Georgia Secretary of State. This was a huge race. If many of you will remember, 2 years ago, John Ossoff, who was this young, white, progressive guy, raised tens of millions of dollars nationally off of running against Karen Handel. Alyssa Milano was knocking doors for her from Who's the Boss, Tony Danza. I mean, he had celebrities. He had all Twitter was abuzz. Facebook was blowing up. Instagram was all grammed out. All for this young white guy, and he lost to her. And now here comes this unsuspecting young soccer mom, African-American soccer mom, who was running on the grief of losing her son and on the need for more comprehensive gun control measures, and she threw out a former statewide elected official in the cradle of the Confederacy. I always hype Democratic wins, but I don't have to hype this one. This is nothing short of miraculous. And it proves that God is still indeed on the throne, and I thank you.
You can't even follow that one up with anything else. I mean, he just broke it down for us.
The
and again,
cradle of the Confederacy.
Yeah.
Good God, I'm about to steal that.
And again, as we talked about, Democrats added 2 more seats today. You still got 11 races that are open, but Democrats could essentially get, more than likely, they'll have about 231, but they could essentially get 235 seats or even more, 36, but usually probably about 35 before it's all said and done. I mean, that is a monumental. Now, mind you, we still haven't, settled some of the things that are in the Senate, right? You still got seats pending there. Republicans have picked up 2 seats, right? You don't want to pick up too many more because it's going to be harder for Democrats in the next 2 years to be able to try to pick off more seats to become the majority, even though Republicans are going to have a lot of seats to defend in 2 years from now. But it's going to be interesting to see. Now, Ivan, by the way, tip jar, late jar, where's it at?
No, I was here. I was.
No, you weren't. You wasn't. No, you wasn't.
Sit in that chair.
Sit in that chair.
Nope. So we're going to talk about this real quick. I see you. We'll get to David, and then we got our special guests on the line as well. Baltimore police officer found guilty by a judge just an hour ago for fabricating evidence in a case in which his own body camera footage showed him placing the drugs in a vacant lot and then acting like he had just discovered it. Officer Richard Pinheiro Jr. was found guilty today by Judge Finn. We had talked about this case here on the show the past couple of days. Is this a big win for the state prosecutor?
It is. You know, the state's attorney's office isn't getting too many wins at all, so it's a huge win. But you also have to know the judge. It was Judge Melissa Finn. She's a former defense attorney. Mm-hmm. She hates. I know her. We work together. We've done cases against as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney. That's one of her pet peeves. I'd have never taken a bench trial in front of Judge Melissa Finn with this particular issue and these set of facts, because it was going to come down to whether or not they were going to believe this police officer in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But yes, it is a huge win. But, you know, his story pretty much was the same, that, hey, I didn't fabricate. I went and did a reenactment. So I think it really comes down to as a reenactment of fabrication, and for Judge Finn it was. Mm-hmm. So it's a big win. But if you can't win that case, you can't win any. It's on videotape. He's telling you that it wasn't the actual truth and he didn't file a report. If that isn't an easy guilty, I don't know what is. So,
but from a defense standpoint, was it, like you said, a smart move to have a bench trial as opposed to picking 12 jurors? Now, mind you, those jurors probably don't trust the police.
Yeah, but you know what? It needs 12 to say guilty.
Right.
And no matter how bad it is, in Baltimore City jurors just don't really like to convict the police on this issue. There would have been, out of 12, you'd have gotten one or two that would have sat down and said, well, you know, it's possible.
Right.
You know, I personally wouldn't have, because I know Judge Melissa Finn. Now, I will tell you this, she's very good for the defense, but she does not play. Remember, she's the judge that gave a man 300 years when he pled guilty to violating her probation and picking up an attempt sexual offense and attempt murder. So she does not play. And she's a very rough and tough judge in terms of she's going to give you, as the kids say, she's going to give you the law. And for her, it was very simple. But for me, it wouldn't, because remember, we're dealing with a legal concept and a legal issue that a judge is going to sit down and see through, where a jury is going to sit down and be able to say, well, there's a difference between a reenactment or lying. I mean, what's going on? I mean, all types of things. Mm-hmm. So, you know, every attorney, I'm not trying to sit down. It's easy for me now to say Monday morning quarterback, or I would have done this, I'd have done that.
Yeah, you're not trying to get that W up. You're not trying to get that W up.
You know, each and every attorney is a little different. But I think, you know, without a doubt, you know, hey, it's a humongous win for them. It's the first win, I think actually the second time they've ever convicted a police officer out of the past 22 cases.
Wait a minute, Ivan. Are you saying it wasn't a wise choice for the state's attorney to choose a bench trial?
Well, the state's attorney can choose the defense.
Right.
Yeah.
But, so if the defense chooses a bench trial before a very, by rumor at least, anti-police judge, what in God's name would compel them to make such a decision? I mean, wouldn't you rather, if I'm a defendant, a hung jury is certainly preferable to a conviction, you know? Mm-hmm. So if I think at least I got a shot at hanging a jury, wouldn't I rather take a jury than, especially if I know that the judge is kind of, you know, against the police or tends to, you know.
Well, you know, each attorney and client is different. You know, some clients are like, look, I don't ever want to be judged by the citizens of Baltimore City. I just take my chance with the judges.
Yeah.
I mean, it just depends.
Right.
Police officers tend to have better relationships with the judges because they see the judges. They give search and seizure warrants to the judges. So I think there's a feeling like, oh, you know what? I feel a judge can be fair as opposed to the citizens not being able to be fair. Now, look, I personally feel that the citizens tend to get it right more times than otherwise.
From the judge?
And yeah, well, the judges, they come with their bias. When you're a judge and you're sitting there and you're seeing the stuff each and every single day, it wears you down. Eventually, you do have bias. Being a defense attorney, you're going to have bias. Being a prosecutor, you're going to have a bias. But citizens bringing their own experiences and life experiences. So what's going on in Park Heights is a lot different than what's going on in Federal Hill. So you're putting those individuals on the jury. The juror from Federal Hill may view the police different than the juror in Park Heights. It's just really a roll of the dice. It really, really is.
Well, if you want that good legal advice, if you got to go to court, then you better call 410-814-4600. Bates and Garcia is that Maryland legal dream team that you're going to need.
Yes,
Trust and believe. Otherwise, you can take a chance with the public pretender's office or another attorney who can represent you like this and end up going to a judge, a bench trial, and get you convicted. But if you want the right attorneys, call Bates and Garcia, 410-814-4600. Now,
their motto is "We get W's."
Yeah, we do.
Let me put this in context for the listeners and on callers. I see y'all. Please hold, David, Jennifer, others. Want to get you. We know it's Free for All Friday. We want the input from our listeners, but we got to get to the guests right now real quick. I want to put this in context for people who may not know. So every 10 years, we have a census, and then they draw the lines, right? It's called redistricting. And this young man led an effort with something called Maryland petitions to put the congressional redistricting on the ballot because many people, including the 3-judge panel recently, felt as though that the last redistricting was done improperly, that it was done unfairly, it was done to favor the Democratic Party and Democrats. So they jammed a whole bunch of people in the first district, made it solid Republican, right? We just saw that just this past election. But they also took out of 6th district and made it in such a way that it's going to be hard to beat a Democrat. And so a 3-judge panel recently ruled earlier this week that was unconstitutional, the way they drew the boundaries of the Maryland 6th Congressional District to benefit Democrats and banned the map from being used in future elections. Because of this decision now, the courts has said that it's up to the state to submit a new plan with a new map by March 7th, the day after my birthday. And otherwise, that 3-judge panel would then step in and put in a 3-member commission to do the job for the state, right? This young man who was leading the effort to try to get it changed on the ballot earlier decided, you know what, now that we're going to redistrict the 6th district, I represent Washington County in District 2A as a state delegate. So today he made a huge announcement about forming a particular entity that I'm going to let him talk to it, but I want to welcome to the show Delegate Neil Parrott. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great this afternoon, Hassan. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, thanks for coming on such short notice. I mean, I literally, family, just told him 30 minutes ago, 5 minutes before we went on air, and he was very responsive, came on. So you had an announcement earlier this morning. I kind of tried to lay it out a little bit for you, but what happened today and what made you come to that decision?
Well, a couple events this week happened. Of course, on Tuesday, we had the election results, and thankfully, I did really well. I was reelected to the delegate position in Washington County, and, of course, the House of Representatives flipped from Democrat to Republican. And then on Wednesday, that's when this 3-judge panel decided that the districts that are in Maryland are not legal. They have to be changed by March. Now, of course, this could be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court by our Attorney General Frost, and I believe he will try to appeal it, and it'll be interesting to see if the Supreme Court takes this case or not. But if they don't take the case, then Maryland does have until March, and they're going to have to redraw these lines, or the 3-judge panel said they'll do the lines for us.
And I don't see the Supreme Court, even if they do take the case, overturning the decision.
That's what they've been doing all over the country, Hassan. This is not going to stand. This ruling is not going to stand. They've been clear that they do not think that a political gerrymander is a justiciable issue. And that's the conservatives on the court. They are never going to let Maryland have to redraw their maps based on it being a partisan gerrymander. I almost wish they would, because then Wisconsin and Ohio and the Republicans have a lot more to lose by eliminating political gerrymandering than Democrats do. But I'm telling you.
Not in this case.
Yeah, no, but I wish they can't do one and not the others. It's going to be, I wish it was not allowed anymore. But
thank God we got a Republican Governor, Larry Hogan, who will be in charge of drawing those maps. So Delegate Parrott,
in conjunction with the legislature.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
And
so Delegate Parrott, what did you announce earlier today in regards to
his congressional run in 6?
Sure. So you guys have a bunch of great points, especially with the Supreme Court, that they may just overturn this, and that's very, very possible. But, I'm concerned. In District 6, it's rural Western Maryland, and our values have not been represented since 2012, since this map. We had Congressman Bartlett, but since then we had Congressman Delaney, and now we have Congressman Trone, who just got elected. Both of those guys, they live in Potomac, which is right near Washington, D.C. I mean, just right there, stone's throw away from Washington, D.C. They don't represent the rural Western Maryland values, and they don't even understand what's really important to us out here in Garrett, Allegheny, Washington counties, since they're so close to D.C. So today I made the announcement that I'm going to form an exploratory committee to look at running for Congress in the year 2020 so that we can give the people a choice in Western Maryland to be able to vote for their rural Western Maryland values.
Right. And so, if I'm not mistaken, neither Trone nor former congressman, well, he's still a congressman now until January, but neither one of them actually live in the 6th district, which is by law allowed, correct?
Yes, it's unfortunate. I think that should be a law that they should have to live in the district that they're representing, but You're exactly right. The congressman-elect and the existing congressman, they live in the 8th district, and they live right next to D.C., and they don't really represent us. But the problem is we don't have enough votes. They've gerrymandered it so that over a third of Montgomery County voters vote in District 6, which just overwhelms the population of the rural part of this district, so that it's hard to get someone who would actually be from Garrett, Allegheny, or Washington County to actually win to represent the district.
Delegate, perhaps future Congressman, I have a couple of questions for you. Isn't part of the problem that rural Western Maryland doesn't have enough population to constitute a congressional district by themselves?
Well, they would have a concentration if the maps were drawn fairly.
Well,
so
no. What I mean is what I'm trying to get at is the minimum number of people that constitute a congressional district. How many counties out there would it take to get to the number that? I'm not talking about the partisan balance. I'm just talking about people, population.
Oh, sure. So District 6, what I believe that if the lower court decision stands, it will include Garrett, Allegheny, Washington, all of Frederick, which it only right now includes the city of Frederick, all of Frederick, probably about a third of Carroll County, and then also probably the northern part of Montgomery County, so the very northern part of Montgomery County, which land-wise is much more similar to like a Frederick or Washington County than the further south you go as you get closer to D.C. with Rockville and Gaithersburg and Bethesda.
So, Delegate, looking at the business now, right? You're going into a new legislative session. You're maybe 5 to 7 members shorter than you were going in, but we still have the same governor. What do you think now going in would be the Republican agenda, or just the agenda overall moving forward over the next 4 years?
Well, I tell you, it's going to be very interesting. I saw that Governor Hogan wants to cut taxes, but that's going to be hard to do given the makeup of the House and the Senate. It has become more liberal as of this year. Next year, as we come in, like you mentioned, we lost probably about 5 to 7 House of Delegate members, and also a lot of people in the state Senate that were there for decades were beat this time or decided to retire. And so Mike Miller's dealing with a whole new set of state senators, especially on the Democrat side, that are a lot more liberal than the group that was there before. So he's going to have a hard time controlling them. To get, I think, what he would like to see happen So I think tax cuts is probably not going to happen. You know, next year we're going to be looking at this Kerwin Commission. That's going to be a big, big deal for our state. Are we going to spend huge amounts of money, new money, on public schools and have, like, mandatory 3-year-olds going to school? Are we going to pay for colleges more than we already do? I mean, these are some questions that are going to be there, and it's going to cost a ton of money. And it'll be interesting to see how that's handled with the General Assembly. We do know that the drive for 5, Governor Hogan was trying to get 5 votes so that if he vetoes something, they would have to get at least one Republican to join the Democrats to override that veto. But as it is, 3 Democrats can actually leave and vote with the governor, and they can still override a veto of the governor. So he's at a huge disadvantage there. The governor, again, is going to have to work with Mike Miller and Mike Bush as best as possible to get his agenda moving forward.
And speaking, let me just ask you off the record. Do you may plan to, because this is what I always hope, are you going to be trying to get into the leadership in the GOP in the House? Because we need level-minded individuals in leadership in that House.
Well, I do agree with that. We need level-minded ones, and people who can work with many different kinds of people in the General Assembly, both sides, but bipartisan. And so right now I'm actually the minority whip. So you've got Nick Kipke, who's the minority leader, Kathy Schlega, who's the minority whip, and I'm like her assistant, the assistant minority whip. And I don't know what that's going to look like coming into 2019. That could change, and so I'm going to talk with them. I'd like to stay in that position, but that'll be up to Nick, Delegate Kipke, and Delegate Schlega, what kind of leadership they'd like to see there.
All right. Well, thank you, Delegate Parrott, for calling in on such short notice to share with us the announcement you made just earlier today. And we'll be paying attention, and I know you'll be on top of this congressional hearings one way or the other. But I think it's huge, and I think it'll be a win for Maryland to have you as the next congressman for the 6th congressional district, regardless of if the map is changed from its current view to possibly something different later on.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you, Hassan. And it's great to be on the show this afternoon. I mean, I could tell the listeners, you have just done so much for our state as we looked at even trying to overturn the current map. You just saw that it was just blatantly wrong and unfair, and helped to make people aware of that situation and tried to correct a bad situation. So hopefully we actually see it corrected, but we won't know until the Supreme Court either takes the case or not. And, they may not take the case, in which case the lower court decision stands.
Absolutely. And that could be the best day ever for the great state of Maryland.
Will not happen.
Thank you so much, Delegate Parrott. Have a great weekend and a great Veterans Day.
Thank you, too.
All right. Now, got to go to David. I'm so sorry, David. I know you've been holding so long, but thanks for being patient and hanging in there with us. Welcome to the DMV Daily Show.
Man, I got to give you guys credit. You guys doing a fantastic job. Your articulation, your professionalism is off the charts. I don't think you guys realize how much your show is growing, because you are attracting an audience that a lot of shows on our black AM radio station cannot attract. So keep doing what you're doing on the front end.
We appreciate that.
2 questions. One was political and one was for the attorney. So maybe you guys, I'll listen after that. Now, the race in Florida and Georgia for governor was real close. If they do a recount, do they actually physically recount the votes, or they just run them back through the scanners or whatever and count them again? Do you know which way what they do in a recount?
So Florida and Georgia are different. In Florida, if you are within 0.25 of a percentage point, which today the Senate race is and the governor's race is not, then you get a hand recount, which means you are actually doing it by hand, each ballot. If you are within 0.5 of a percentage point, then you get a machine recount, which is basically kind of running the tapes again throughout the whole state. So there's a difference between how close it is depends on what kind of recount you get.
And the governor's race is within that reach.
So 0.5, right, but not the 0.25.
And in Georgia, they have yet to get done the ballots, counting the ballots. So if with provisionals and others that Kemp actually goes below 50%, then we're going to go into a runoff situation, so we won't even have to worry about the recount situation.
And what is the definition of a runoff?
So if no candidate receives, because the Libertarian ran and got about 1%, if no candidate gets a majority of the votes, meaning 50% plus 1, then you eliminate the other candidates and send it to a runoff in December, where it's just The only two names on the ballot will be Stacey Abrams and the Secretary of State, former Secretary of State.
Oh, okay. So as of today, in the United States, we have 0 African-American governors anyway. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's right.
Question for the attorney real quick. Everybody heard about the viral incident where the girl punched the teacher at Douglas High School. If you were to represent her, what would be your strategy? And I just listen.
Representing the young lady who...
People need to... Let's assume the teacher pressed charges against the student for assault, and you have to represent her. I'm not saying you would, hypothetically.
Well, I think...
What would be your strategy?
Well, one, assuming that the young lady's in juvenile, and your strategy in juvenile and adult court to me are somewhat different. The purpose of juvenile is rehabilitation. It's always about making sure the children get what they need. So you're not as worried about an assault conviction in juveniles. You're more worried about making sure the child gets the resources that they need. There's obviously something that's going on. I want to make sure that we've done the mental health evaluations. I want to make sure to see what, if any, trauma she's experienced in her life to have her act out in that way. I want to make sure she gets the programs and the wraparound services. I'm not as worried about the actual plea bargain in juvenile. On the adult side, you know, if they're say they waive them to be an adult, or say they're in juvenile and they're 18. I don't know how old the child was. I think she was 15 or 16.
She's 18.
She's 18. Oh, she's an adult. Well, then you're looking at, look, it was on camera. It wasn't provoked. So without a doubt, you're going to have second-degree assault. I'm going to be angling once again. Once I sit down and talk to her to find out if there are any mental health issues, you can always file what's called an NCR, not criminal responsible, to sit down and say, hey, this young lady or this young lady had a number of mental health issues, and she had anger management issues. She had lead pain issues. These are the issues that she did not have impulse control over her actions. And, you know, hopefully the judge will grant her a probation before judgment. At that moment in time, is able to go ahead and allow her record to still be clean for employment purposes. But, you know, most likely, because I'm assuming that the NCR will not work. But then you're looking at what is the plea bargain. You're looking at a possibly probation before judgment to hopefully say, give me some community service, give her some wraparound services, and let's see what is still some of the mental health issues that she has in the anger management program. Once she completes the anger management program successfully, if the judge hasn't given a probation before judgment, then I'm going to ask the judge to consider that once she's successfully completed her probation.
Now, on the other side of that coin, in California, I think it was, the teacher actually beat the student up. If you had to represent the teacher, what would be your strategy?
You know, it's funny. In law school, I remember we learned about things were called fighting words. And those are words that, you know, I would simply sit down and talk about how that teacher was basically placed in a situation with those fighting words and, you know, the nature of those words and how they provoked him and how this person, I wouldn't view him as a child. I would not want the jury to view this person as a child, but their words were so inflammatory. And I'd also sit down and wrap around what Donald Trump has done to America, sitting down with the anger and the hatred and coming and dealing with that each and every single day of this man's 61-year life. And for the past 61 years, then you have a kid coming and using those words over and over and over again. And that at that moment in time, the boy then hit him, and therefore he had a right to defend himself when he hit him with that basketball. Now, you know, if you're going to wish to proceed in that way and in that light. But I'll also sit down and look at the school system and sit down and say the school system most likely should have had that young man in the classroom, and they should have protected that teacher at that moment in time as well.
Ivan, anything like environment would be taken into consideration? Because I know we've had many discussions on many different shows about lead paint poisoning, possible, you know, water in the water fountains in the school, lead in the water in the fountains in the school. Does anything environmental ever, you know?
I mean, a lot of the things that people talk about, they're really kind of what we view as mitigation, like the lead paint, you know, angry, all those issues. Sometimes they are mitigation. The law is going to sit down and look at, one, Did you strike the person? Were you provoked? Were you defending yourself? That's how it's going to look at that, to try to keep it as simple as possible. A lot of times from the defense point of view, you're going to sit down and try to bring some of societal issues to sit down and have the jury look outside the box, because technically, legally, you don't have a case. She struck her point blank in discussion. But then you want the jury to sit down and maybe not view it in that same way, to feel some sorrow for your client if you can.
And speaking of David's,
as well,
speaking of David's questions about Florida, I don't know if people have been. So your homeboy, President Donald Trump, goes on the Twitter, says as soon as Democrats sent their best election stealing lawyer, Mark Elias, I thought he was going to say you, to Broward County, they miraculously started finding Democratic votes. Don't worry, Florida. I am sending much better lawyers to expose their fraud.
It's beyond shameful for the President of the United States to invite questions about the underpinnings of our democracy. I mean, really, seriously, this is beyond the pale. But Hassan, if I could, I want to take 30 seconds to do something I really rarely do, and that is issue an apology. Many of you know that, me and Delegate Parrott, if you know me and you know him, we've gone through it over the DREAM Act, over LGBT marriage equality, over a whole host of issues. But honestly, when I joked about him running for Congress before he got on, I had no idea that was actually what he was announcing. I'm a person of integrity. I would never step on his announcement in that way. He came on to make the announcement, and by me joking, I disrespected what he wanted to do. And even though I stand with every fiber of my being against most of what that man believes, I would never take advantage of my platform on this station to try and step on his announcement. So, Delegate Parrott, you have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, an apology from Mark Jason McLaurin. I do apologize, sir.
Apology accepted.
Thank you.
And I'm going to tell you something, man. And this is why, and I know this is not you, but people always tend to judge people just based off party, right? And for most people on this radio station and others, just because of what party he represents would never bring him on to make that announcement, which is big. Because if you know Neil Parrott, you know two things. Number one, to me, Neil Parrott is probably as close to you get to somebody like a Howard County exec, Alan Kittleman, right? He is in that, and
not ideologically.
He had not ideologically.
Okay,
right?
But
personally, this is a man who will go to bat for anybody. Doesn't matter race, party, any of that type of stuff. Very smart, very in tune with policy, understands it to an nth degree, and is somebody who doesn't carry the party banner just to carry it, right?
I'd agree.
And so you got to respect that about people. See, to me, I look at things just differently. Obviously, I'm fiscally conservative. I have a lot of Republican friends. I have no problem with that. And got a lot of Democratic friends, too. I'll remain in that. But I think everybody deserves their chance to be able to be heard, regardless of how you feel about it, what you think about it, where to get. Now, I just happen to agree. If I lived in the 6th Congressional District, Neil Parrott would get my vote. I just don't live in the 6th Congressional District. If he ran against Elijah Cummings, Neil Parrott would get my vote.
Sweet Jesus of Bethlehem.
But he's not running in the 7th Congressional District. But Elijah Cummings got my vote the other day. So, it is what it is. But, and speaking of which, we're looking to have the congressman on very, very soon as well. That's exciting. That'll be a good thing as well. Now, I see Brenda Austin says she has a question for us that has there been a candidate such as the Secretary of State of Georgia who controls the election and is a candidate. He had control. I've never heard that before. And most of the times, Secretary of States and people like that who have those controls step away from the job during the election.
As much as I would like to say that there's not a precedent for that, oftentimes secretaries of state run for governor, and they usually do not recuse themselves. Now, usually they're not quite as partisan and as outspoken as he is, but I mean, just, 12 years ago, Kathy Cox, the Democratic Secretary of State from Georgia, ran for governor as a Democrat. So it's kind of hard for us to say.
She ran for governor as a Democrat.
Yes. And
did she not resign, but did she step away from the position while she was running towards the end?
No.
So she remained the Secretary of State.
Yes, through the primary election, but she didn't win the primary. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, to me, that's a problem.
No, I agree with you.
I'm problem.
I try and be fair in saying that it's not. It wouldn't be accurate to say this is unprecedented of him to stay where he is, because most of the time they do.
But
even though they shouldn't, none of them should.
Levels that he took
completely
to make sure that certain ballots weren't accepted and things of that sort now that had to have been unprecedented.
Yes, absolutely, no question about it.
Even the judges had to step in.
Right.
Okay, let's say this is going way too far.
Yeah.
That's a problem. Like I always say on the show, and I know you hate when I say it, but to me, it's always been the truth. And this saying actually came out of Cuba, to be quite honest. But it's not about who votes, but who counts the votes, right? Yeah. And it's true. I mean, look. I've talked to every political in this town, and none of us can figure out the clerk of the courts race and how that played out. And if you want to analyze anything, that would kind of say, to some degree, it could be possibly who counts the votes. You don't know what they're doing in there, and that's why I've always been against
in your fevered imaginings, Hassan. Who do you imagine is manipulating the votes? Armstead can't tie his shoes. Who exactly do you think is down? Do you
think that Armstead is? Let me tell you something.
No.
I'm going to break this on facts.
Explain to me who is systematically adjusting the vote totals.
Listen to me on this, right?
And you don't think it was an alphabetical issue?
No, it wasn't no alphabetical issue.
That's right.
And when we're talking about counting the votes, listen to this, right? Armstead Jones is a Republican. Now, I want people to understand this. When a governor gets in, it's their party who has the appointment process, and their party controls the board.
Yep. Correct.
Right?
In most of the counties.
Now, in all of them. They are all majority. So if it's 5 members, it's 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats. If it's a Republican governor, vice versa.
In most cases, yes.
Right? But in this case, see, Armstead's not the chair. Armstead is actually the director of, right? He used to be on the board. Then he changed over. When Barbara Jackson resigned as the executive director of the Board of Elections, they appointed a Democrat. Martin O'Malley appointed a Republican as the executive director of Baltimore City's Board of Elections.
Okay.
This man, and I'm just going to be honest with you, I wish he would call on, and he ain't going to tell you otherwise. I was researching a article I was doing in regards to, most people don't understand this as well, according to the city charter, every senior person that works under the mayor's office that does board commissions and others have to live in and be a voter of Baltimore City. It's in the Baltimore City charter. Most elected officials in Baltimore found out didn't even know their own city charter, because when I asked them and showed it to them, they were baffled. They didn't know this. I made an inquiry to the Board of Elections because I knew certain people, like the former police commissioner, was not a voter of Baltimore City. And this wasn't the past former commissioner. This was a couple of commissioners ago. This is when Stephanie Rawlins Blake was mayor. When I went down there and made the inquiry and said, I want to know every position, every high-up position in this administration, their voter registration status. They said, all right, Hassan, no problem. I know everybody down there. They all know who I am. They said, all right, we'll get it back to you in about 2 days. No problem. When I went back down there 2 days later, the lady pulled me up and said, Hassan, we're not going to be able to do that for you. Why not? It's a freedom of information request. You can't deny me this. Yeah, well, Armstead said that's just not going to be able to happen. Now, mind you, they were open and willing at first until they found out why I was doing it. Then I come to find out that Armstead met with Stephanie and members of the Democratic establishment every Friday. Now, why? Why is the Board of Elections executive director a Republican meeting on a weekly basis with the Democratic mayor and the Democratic establishment other than some kind of cohesion? Now, mind you, I didn't even think too much of it then until we found out what happened in 2016. That was a clear. Let me tell you something, Mark. You can laugh all you want.
Mark, conspiracy or what?
We found ballots in the corner of the warehouse they never counted, but they already certified the election results. How do you certify when you got a box of ballots sitting right here? When you got 7 different files that come up missing. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I've been waiting for you to get to the acceptance part of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grief. You've been at anger, you've been at bargaining.
It's not about
I need
anger.
you to
It's
get to
called
acceptance.
Common sense.
Look,
you're not going to pull the wool over my eyes, piss on my leg, and tell me it's raining.
Listen,
I've been doing elections for way too long.
I don't deny that there is inherent sloppiness. In fact, there is too much slop, especially in Baltimore City. I've called for Linda Lamone and Armstead to join hands and skip down the yellow brick road to retirement. They're both dumpster fires.
This ain't sloppiness.
There's a terrible election administration.
Coordinated effort.
There is no coordinated.
It is a coordinated
to change votes in Baltimore City.
Okay,
I know that's what you need to believe in.
I know. Even if 2016 didn't happen, let me tell you something.
Oh God!
This is the only thing I'm going to ask you.
Who would have the power?
Here's the only thing I'm going to ask you.
Change.
Who has the power?
Yeah, who?
You in politics. Don't sit here and tell these people, act like you don't know that there's people that you never see in politics that control the purse strings of the politicians. Come on now.
Of course, but
don't
that
be
doesn't
foolish.
mean, how would they get into the machines and systematically alter vote counts from Cherry Hill to Roland Park? I mean,
they've already shown it to you on shows like Scandal.
Oh, Hassan,
right? It's not. It's not as if this shit is just melting. This
Scandal.
Stuff
That's
is
not
just
the real
made
world.
Up.
What
is it then?
There's no.
What is it then?
Olivia
it's not hard.
Olivia Pope is not trapped in a room below the.
I just want to ask you one question. Then I just want you to think about this. Right.
Okay.
4 to 6 years ago, Maryland paid millions of dollars to buy what's called the Diebold machine.
Mm-hmm.
They said, you know what? We're going to go from paper ballot to electronic because we're in the new age. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars for these machines, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a big issue about why can't you have receipts so people can know where their vote was cast, that their vote was cast there. No, it'll cost too much, da-da-da. We already spent all this money. 2 years later, those machines, guess what, are collecting dust in the warehouse because they went right back to paper ballots. You know why? Because they figured out they couldn't steal the damn election through a machine, but they could do it through a paper ballot.
It was many of us that were insisting they get rid of Diebold.
Taxpayer money.
It was us. It was us, Hassan.
Come on, Thomas, come on the show. This man is bamboozled. You've been bamboozled.
Talk about jumping the shark. The shark has been left over on Friday's show.
Thomas, welcome to the DMVDaily Show.
Baby Jesus in a manger.
Good afternoon, guys. Hey, how you guys doing?
Hey, I'm good. How you doing?
Mark,
yes, sir.
Do me a favor. Please take your medicine, man.
Oh, my God.
Please take that medicine.
I need it.
Thank you.
We've been around for a while. So I got a question about them voting machines, right?
Everybody does.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
A company called Diebold.
Yes.
Diebold that makes those machines. How is it they can't give me a receipt for my vote, but they can give me a receipt if I ain't got no money in the bank?
How about that?
Well,
but they can get a receipt when you go to McDonald's, but you can't get a machine.
That's the very reason why we teamed up and got them to get rid of Diebold, because we did not trust the fact that they couldn't give us a receipt. We were with you on that.
So they got rid of hundreds of millions of dollars of machines because you said so.
Not me, but the coalition that was demanding that if there was not
they got rid of the machines so they could steal the election through paper ballots.
Oh, God. That must be some good drugs.
Yes, sir.
I have been one that's been saying for a long time, Armstead Jones needed to go. Okay?
We all know that.
It behooves me to find out why he still has this job. I mean,
Larry Hogan.
Who is his boss?
Well, see, here's the thing. You can't blame that on Hogan. Does not control that appointment process. That's actually up to the board.
The people that he appointed to the board, which is Republican controlled.
Yeah, but you got Democrats on there. They haven't called for his resignation either.
Well, but your three Republican appointees could have had him gone yesterday.
And the Democrats could have got one of the Republicans, and they've had him gone. So that's to me,
even though Republicans are the majority, it's the Democrats who are responsible for not getting one of the Republicans.
No, there's no party. See, y'all always make it party.
Boyd Rutherford, call your office.
Need to go. They need to come together regardless of party. The man needs to go. Simple as that.
So it's the Democrats' fault that Armstead Jones still has his job?
Absolutely. You know why?
Even though there's only two of them.
Guess who's been giving Armstead so much cover this whole time? The man who got him appointed in the first place, late Senator Nathaniel McFadden. That's his cousin's baby father. That's the one who got him in office. And I'm telling you, it's the truth.
So if that's his cousin's baby's father, then why didn't Armstead change the vote so Corey lost and Matt could go back for another 4 years? I don't understand it.
Because it doesn't stop at Armstead.
Oh, okay.
Armstead doesn't control
Olivia
it.
Pope kind of. We don't see the person doing it.
It's the people up top, above your pay grade, that tells them what to do.
Is it like Bill Cole in the GVC, or is it like the Trilateral Commission?
Shut up, man.
Hey, good morning, man. I mean, Captain.
Good. How you doing, Eric?
So listen, check this out, man. We got to stop being naive. These people can tell what's in galaxies billions of miles away, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Feds got technology where both of y'all in there, all y'all in there, y'all cell phones turned off. They can turn it back on and listen to your whole conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But they can't fix an election.
Exactly.
We gotta stop being naive, man.
Stop being naive, Mark.
Stop being naive, Doug. I mean, it's serious. I mean, I don't believe in the process because of what the brother was talking about. I believe that they know who they want in office, and if they feel like they're going to lose, they will hide ballots and do whatever else they needed. I mean, come on, you talking about technology, you talking about computers. I mean, you don't know who can control them, that you don't know what's going on. Maybe
this kind of talk amounts to voter suppression. This is voter suppression.
It is.
This is why people don't vote. No, this is why people don't vote. Because people get on the air and say it doesn't matter who vote for you. They got it all fixed in. The Trilateral Commission has decided. Well, then why would people vote? In the 2016
race, even the federal judge told the Board of Elections, these people got you dead to rights. The only reason I'm dismissing this, and you know what the term is, I don't know the legal jargon, it's like on merit or something. Like, I'm not dismissing it because they don't have the facts. I'm dismissing it because you missed the 30-day window.
Then why right now in Florida and in Georgia they are going to courts because of voter,
it's absolute voter suppression. But what I'm saying is,
but only can Republicans suppress the vote, huh?
No. Well, normally it's in Republicans' interest to have less votes counted because the more people that vote, it tends to be the more marginal voters that are Democrats. But either way, shape, or form, what I'm saying is, when you get on the radio, sir, and you tell people that the elections are preordained, it doesn't matter what they do. That's exactly what the other side wants people to believe. You are giving folks an excuse not to vote. Because if I believed you, I wouldn't vote. I'm talking to Eric. If I believed you, I wouldn't vote.
Well, let me tell you something. This is...
All right. We got to go.
Oh. Bye, Eric. We'll talk Monday.
Yeah, you got to come back Monday. Monday, we're talking about elections. We're talking about city elections and who they're going to set up to win the next mayoral race in 2020.
Olivia Pope, call your office.
And then Tuesday, trust me, you're not going to want to miss this. Monday, you'll see the preview. Every week we put out a video preview on what's coming up this week. Trust me, Tuesday, you better drop everything you're doing and pay attention to the DMV Daily Show. But until then, happy Veterans Day.
Happy weekend.
We'll be back on Monday.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Happy Veterans Day.
And watch out for them UFOs.
Happy Steal the Elections Day. Steal the Elections Friday.
For us,
right here on
we
DMV
going to love
Daily.
him through it. He going to get the acceptance.
We'll get you some help.
The new 1010 WOLB with talk in the day and soul at night.
This check on traffic is sponsored by Unbound.org. A girl in Kenya dreams of becoming a doctor, an elder. In Guatemala, dreams of being part of a community. Reach out and change their world, and it will change your own. Unbound.org. A lot of heavy traffic coming out of the city this afternoon on the JFX. Slow from Fayette up toward Northern Parkway. 395 also a little sluggish now through the rainfall as you make your approach to 95. And then approaching 95, it's going to be slow northbound up to the Fort McHenry Tunnel. A couple of accidents to look out for. One in the intersection of Northern Parkway and Reisterstown Road in northwest Baltimore. And there's a crash in the city on Loch Raven Boulevard at Gorgeous Avenue. This weather update is sponsored by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society, and the Ad Council. Shelter pets are amazing pets, and the only way to find out how truly amazing they are is to meet one. So visit the shelterpetproject.org today and adopt. A little rain early this evening, but clearing, low around 41. Tomorrow, sunny, highs in the mid-40s. Right now, it's 53 degrees. I'm Tony Thornton on 1010 WOLB.
1010 WOLB Baltimore and WERQ-FM HD3 Baltimore.
Ted had a big IRS problem.
I owed the IRS over $35,000. I was scared. I just didn't know what to do.
He had a pretty good idea what the IRS might do.
They can take my car, my truck, garnish my wages, get into my bank accounts.
Ted's brother suggested Optima Tax Relief.
Optima took over and things started happening fast.
The leading tax resolution firm, Optima Tax Relief, is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. They've resolved over $500 million for their clients. So how's Ted doing now?
Since my debt was resolved, the stress is gone. I don't have any more sleepless nights.
Listen to Ted and call Optima now for a free consultation.
Call Optima. Don't wait. Optima Tax is like a bodyguard. They're there to protect me. If they can help me, I'm sure they can help you.
Call 800-799-0977. That's 800-799-0977. 800-799-0977.
Optima Tax Relief.
Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Selfless service is the guiding principle that drives Army National Guard soldiers to be always ready whenever disaster strikes. They are your next-door neighbors and your colleagues in schools, offices, and factories. To be a Guard soldier is to stand ready to serve at all times for family, for community, and for country. To learn more, log on to NationalGuard.com or contact an Army National Guard recruiter in your area.
Sponsored by the Maryland Army National Guard. Aired by the Maryland, D.C., Delaware Broadcasters Association at this station.
BDX Live Talk Show is now heard live every Thursday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. on 1010 a.m. BDX Live Talk Show with host Lou Fields covers business news, travel, community, politics, history, special events, and special guests. Tune in every Thursday and have lunch with Lou on WOLB 1010 a.m. BDX, the live Black Dollar Exchange, is located at www.bdx443.com. Have lunch with Lou every Thursday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. BDX Live Talk Show on 1010 a.m.
Talk in the day. Soul at night on the new 1010 WOLB. 1010 WOLB Baltimore and WERQ-FM HD3 Baltimore.
The views and opinions of the guest and host you hear on 1010 WOLB
are not necessarily those of the staff and management of Radio 1, its sponsors, or advertisers.
Taxi Talk Radio. Taxi Talk Radio. This is your Taxi Talk Radio. Taxi Talk Radio. Starring Larry the Taxi driver. Starring Larry the
Yeah. Haha. All right, folks, get ready for Still on a Bad Day. We're going to be coming back with Ross McNutt, Archie Williams, and also Safe Streets is going to be on the phone. So don't test that dial, folks.
Still on a bad day, I won't cry. Still on a bad day, I love God to the day I die. Still on a bad day, I won't lose my faith. Still on a bad day, He knocked my enemies out of my way. Way out of my way. Now I've been through some problems that seem hard to understand. So I pray, show action, and then I put it in God's hands. He never leaves me, keeps me strong. He gives me power to move on. He's the reason that I made it, that I made it through the storms. Still on a bad day, I won't cry. Still on a bad day, I love God to the day I die. Still on a bad day, I won't lose my faith. Still on a bad day, he knocked my enemies out of my way. Way out of my way. When I fall, he picks me up. His love is good enough. He's the reason that I'm here. With his light, I can see so clear. Now I'm walking through the valley, I have no fear, because God is by my side, oh, right here. Now no one in this world can hold me down. No matter what I face, I'm gonna stand my ground. Still on a bad day, I won't cry. Still on a bad day, I love God to the day I die. Still on a bad day, I won't lose my faith. Still on